All right, welcome back to the Diagnosis Redefined podcast. I am your host, Erica Anderson, and I am so looking forward to this episode today because I have been trying to find the right person for this conversation, and I think I found him. When it comes to health and wellness, everyone feels like they have to be in one of two camps. You either have to be completely on the pharmaceutical side or you have to be completely against pharmaceuticals. And most of us who are dealing with chronic illness, we're searching for a way to navigate both because we know medicine can help us, but we also know we don't want to be on it long term. So how do we navigate both worlds? And so I'm really excited to have this conversation with Dr. Kiernan. And just to give you a little background on Dr. Kiernan here, of course, my responses disappeared here. Give me 1 second. All right. With over 25 years of industry business and research experience, Dr. Kiernan is a world-renowned scientist with 12 issued patents, 50 peer-reviewed publications, 4 book chapters, and almost $5 million in NIH grant awards. Now, as the founder and CEO of iMetabolic Biopharma, he has embarked on developing innovation and solving many of the chronic diseases associated with the proliferation of obesity in Western society. Even though he has embarked on this biopharma journey, he is a firm believer that many of our Western health issues could be mitigated through improved diet and lifestyle, specifically in the development and maintenance of lean muscle mass. His insights in the clinical drug process is crucial in combating the narrative presented by other solutions being propagated by the drug and medical industries. And Dr. Kiernan holds a PhD in bioanalytical chemistry from Arizona State University. He is a devoted husband and father of 3, and he also holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and second-degree black belt in Judo. So, welcome to the podcast, Dr. Urban.
Thanks, Erica. Really appreciate the opportunity to share with you and your audience at least some information that might be of use in my melon. And thank you again for being on the Decoding Health podcast, my podcast that was out there. That was a great introduction to you and your story, and hopefully I can compare in terms of passion and wealth of information when it comes to you and your audience. So I'm more than happy to go from there. So I'm not going to add to my story. You did a great job right there. So again, thank you for giving me the warm and fuzzies, regarding my background and everything. But your initial point is in this saga of health, it's not black and white. Everything is a spectrum of gray. I'll put it of terms. Nothing is truly good and truly evil. I'm a firm believer in everything coming forward, for the most part, with good intention. It's just, how does that intention change, especially when the almighty dollar gets involved? And everything changes that. Like if you go and you look at winners of the Powerball and stuff like that, how that has changed people's lives and stuff. So, I just want to kind of throw that out there that, even though I'm in the drug industry, not everybody in the drug industry is bad. You have to go and you look at the specific context in the way something is being used and just simply ask the question, is this fit for purpose? Because there is a huge issue. And I'm going to put this over onto the consumer side. And when I mean consumer, I mean the patient side. There is a responsibility at the patient side to use things responsibly. People can abuse water, which can be life-threatening. Like most people don't realize, it's water. Drink water throughout the day. We hear that, yeah, but there is a threshold in which if you drink too much water, you will wind up in intensive care and you might die because of that. So I just want to kind of throw that out there before we get too heavy into the conversation, Erica, that there is this balance, but, both the producer's side, the drug manufacturers, and I'm even going to throw in there the supplement side and nutraceuticals, because they're not all this golden child trying to save the world too. There is sinister stuff that happens in that industry. And then there's the responsibility on the user side as well. So let's take it from here.
Yeah, awesome. I'm excited for this discussion because I feel like this is exactly what people are looking for. And it's just like you said, there's responsibility that has to be held on both sides of the aisle there. And so for anyone who's listening on the consumer side, that's why they're listening to podcasts like this. Like the way they listen to your podcast is they're trying to be responsible. And it can be really hard to navigate all that information that's out there. So I'm really hoping that we can give some clarity through this conversation. And starting off, though, I'd love for you to tell your story and how you ended up, in this space to begin with. 'Cause it's really powerful.
Wow. So again, I'm not going to say your prototypical PhD because I've only worked in industry my entire career. I had no interest in academia, and for the record, there is a huge difference between industry research and academia research. And there's good, bad, indifferent, any way you want to turn around and slice it. So I've always been on the commercial side of things. There was kind of an academic component to it, and this is like where the NIH grants come into play. Like I went to school for one thing, and just because of the state of the industry, I was in the proteomics, biomarker, diagnostic side, developing innovation and new biomarkers and stuff. I actually got funded by the NIDDK, that's the National Institute of Digestive Diabetes and Kidney Disorders. Say that 10 times really fast after you've been drinking. It's a mouthful. So I got funded by the NIDDK to study biomarkers of pre and type 2 diabetes. That was what the call was for. That really started my scientific journey from like a bioanalytical perspective into the actual clinical aspects of things, but more so from, diagnostics. Now I have to go and throw, my personal story, into this. My views regarding my whole career trajectory changed in 2006 with the death of my first wife. She developed diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, and we were just all helpless as a part of it. And you have to work with your oncologist on this because it is a life-threatening situation. And it's don't know enough about it, not an MD myself. It's like, we're not going to go rogue and just be like going out and trying like herbs and different supplements on this, because she was so sick. Unfortunately, she lost that battle. And I had this epiphany at that moment regarding everything that I was doing in my career. Like biomarkers are absolutely important. And you use that as a part of your practice, Eric, because we need that information on it. But however, unless you can make a decision off of those biomarkers, they're actually pretty useless. It's like you don't need to have a sign on a road with like no exits off of it to tell you to keep on going to where you're going. It's like, duh, So if it doesn't lead into a decision tree left or right, it's you're generating data just for the sake of generating data. It doesn't improve your knowledge base. And that's something that in medicine, there's a real hard time with. Like physicians will go and order tests just for the sake of ordering tests because one, they can charge for it. I'm going to throw that out there. And there's, people are guilty of this. Number two, from a patient side, nobody wants to go into a doctor's office, pay a copay, and leave with absolutely nothing. At least like, here's a script, go to LabCorp request, go get your blood drawn, and we'll take it from there. Okay, we're doing something. It's not like, sorry, I can't help you, which you've experienced, Erica, which is extremely frustrating. And it only adds to the problem because all your cortisol levels spike. A lot of these chronic indications are built around just prolonged abusive levels of inflammation. And when you're just stressed to the max, you can't sleep, you can't eat right, you're worried constantly. There's a biological consequence to go with that. So long story short, really had this initiation of a new way of thinking about what I was doing. And every time I was doing work, and then the startup company that I was with, we were acquired by a much bigger company. And I began to really, really focus on the therapeutic space. And it's like, how do you take these biomarkers and create solutions in which you can create these decision trees much earlier in the pathway? Or, the way I sit right now, how can you make a decision tree to something that's a better option than what we've historically had? Because there's this huge issue in medicine right now that we solve that problem. Cardiovascular disease, for instance, and cholesterol. And you can get your cholesterol measured in multiple different ways, whether it be actual, cholesterol or ApoB. I'm going to throw that out there. That's the new one that everybody's looking at. But do you truly understand how to use that data? And then number two, does it change the course of action? Most clinicians are going to turn around and, oh, your cholesterol levels are outside of what we understand to be this norm. And I don't blame them for, they don't set these guidelines. They're licensed. They have to operate off of these guidelines. You're outside of these guidelines. Our protocol is, I'm going to throw you on a statin. And that's that. But the problem is, though, is just because you're on a statin and those lipid levels, those cholesterol levels wind up going back into quote unquote normal, did that improve your cardiovascular risk profile? And what we're seeing right now, at least in my world, in the research world, which there's a delay of at least 10 to 15 years before it hits the white coats with the stethoscopes. No, to be honest with you, it's a coin toss. We know now that 50% of people who have heart attacks have normal cholesterol levels. So who do you turn around and blame for that? Because they're trying to go and give, the patients want something. They want to feel like we're doing something. Okay, fine. So here's a test. We got a test. We got this information. Oh, we're going to put you on this drug. My body's changing according to this drug, according to the used guidelines. I'm moving in the right direction. I'm feeling better. I can sleep at night. We're doing something. But there's also the question, is it really doing anything, or is it a question of ignorance is bliss? So sorry for going on that diatribe. Started really thinking about, therapeutics and stuff. And then in 2016, long story short, I flat out burned out from my job. I was a global biz dev. I was single dad, for the record, in 2014. I was gone 9 months that year. Being a single dad, my daughters were being raised by nannies. And so you want to talk about a stressful situation. My body was fundamentally confused, living in airports, traveling the world. I filled up a passport in 2 years. In 1 year, I made Diamond Delta and Executive Platinum on American, the two highest tiers on two different airlines in a single year. That's how much I traveled. And so your body's not meant to do that. Burned out, got really sick, like really sick. And so I had to leave that position and refine myself. And over the course of that next year and a half, I had to find myself. I had to prioritize me as a part of that. And that begins with diet and exercise. So I went through the whole process. Elimination diet. If you guys follow me on social media, once in a while, I've got a new pick going up because for Mother's Day, which was a while ago, asked my lovely wife, hey, what do you want for Mother's Day? Clean the closet. Okay. So I went through the closet and I found an old pair of, dress trousers, which were just a gem. And like, I have a picture of me holding them up and it's like literally half of the man that you see in front of you right now. Like I've got like old pictures that I, put up my headshot from like old passports or old global entry cards. And it's like, you wouldn't even be able to tell that was me. I'm a very, very different purpose or a different person. And that was because I prioritized myself. I stopped eating crap, started supplementing appropriately, proper rest, and this has been an evolving process, included exercise. This is where the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu comes into play. Being a better version of myself, even though I was, kind of killing it in the corporate world. There's more to life than just your job. It's like you can go through life, have a great career, make this huge nest egg for your family and everything. Well, if you're not around to enjoy it, what was the freaking point of that? You work your whole life to just put yourself into a casket for somebody else to turn around and enjoy it. And there's nothing wrong with that concept of providing for your family, but wouldn't it be nicer to go and have those experiences with them so that when you're no longer here, they have those memories with that? So that led me into the development of IMBP, Metabolic Biopharma, my company, just simply because I had all of this time to sit down and take all of this knowledge and experience that I learned from really great, smart people, but understanding the way the system worked and being like, wow, that's really either inefficient or that's really fundamentally limited, or that set of drugs really has a set of problems, but those are already committed drugs. They're not going to go and try to develop, because the cost of developing a therapeutic is so expensive. And we haven't even recouped the cost of the investment into this one pharmaceutical. Are we really going to go and pursue new innovation when we haven't even recouped the cost of this previous one. So there's all of these factors that go into play. And again, it's not that these people are sinister or evil. They're a business. Some of your listeners who have 401k plans and stuff, they're invested in a lot of these companies. And so they have to turn around, make money. There's nothing wrong with making money. I make money myself. But this opens the door for creative thought, creative thinking, and the ability to develop innovation. Now, with that said, because of my personal journey, even though I own my own biopharma company, I have a commitment to myself as well as to my family. I am never going to be a customer. That responsibility sits on my shoulders. So I make those personal decisions, whether it be educating myself on certain things, trying different things out and see what, from a personalized medicine standpoint, because the system can't accommodate that. There's just too many people, too much variation from a genetic, genomic, proteomic, epigenetic standpoint. Nobody could be able to accommodate all of the specific nuances of yourself, Erica, or myself, or any of your listeners. That's where your responsibility comes in. And simply going in and trying certain workouts, certain diets, certain supplementation, even certain therapeutics, going and making yourself, to quote Nick Norwitz, an N of one. That's what you have to turn around and ultimately try. Is it a pain in the butt? Absolutely. I would love for somebody to sit down and would have been able to give me a recipe and say, here you go, Urban. Just follow these 10 steps and you're going to be great. In all honesty, even though there are people who promote that we can do this, you really, really can't. Okay, so you just need to go and try the stuff and see what works for you. And some of this stuff, it is very anecdotal or subjective. There is no blood test that will accurately be able to go and give you a bead if this is working. You have to be fundamentally asking the question, do I feel better? Do I look better? Am I a happier individual? And if that's the case, then you're probably on the right path onto something. So, I hope I answered your question, albeit long, but there's a lot that goes to that story. And I hope from my personal story, it resonates with some of your audience members. Like, yeah, I can relate to that. Holy crap, this is my same story. Long story short, if I can freaking do it, I'm nothing special. I'm just a guy. If I can do it, you can do it too. Like, just reclaim your life, because last time I checked, we only get one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you did answer the question. And the theme that I kind of keep hearing from you is basically that the onus is on us as individuals to,
Yeah.
to do what we can to keep ourselves healthy and to avoid having to use medicine and things like that. Even though you, with your company, the therapeutics you guys are producing, you said, well, I don't want to be the patient. Well, that's understandable, because that means you're sick and need help, right? So it's not
Yes.
that this is what you're doing is a bad thing. And that's kind of what I want to hit on. Like, what is the difference between, you keep saying therapeutics versus like typical pharmaceuticals? What's the difference there?
There are certain nuances. The reason why I say therapeutics is because I'm in the biopharma space. Technically, that's not pharmaceuticals traditionally, by our science definition. Pharmaceuticals are pills that you pop. Biopharmaceuticals, because the complexity of the actual molecule, they're manufactured in a different way, very different type of molecule, and we have to inject them into you. Like most of the stuff we're personally working on at IMBP, these are all subcutaneous injections that you can use at home. There are other ones that are much more invasive, or you need an IV in case of a lot of the cancer biologics. The like big ones would be like Herceptin for breast cancer. That's a really, really big one. As a part of your treatment, Erica, were you on a biologic?
Yeah, I was on Enbrel.
Enbrel. Okay, but that's sub-Q injection. Sub-Q. Okay. So I just kind of like use the term therapeutic as a part of that, but therapeutic could even go to like massage.
Right.
Yeah. It's just like, are you feeling better? But like when I use the term therapeutic, it's specifically regarding the biopharma industry. So because whether it's be pharmaceuticals or biopharmaceuticals, we have to play the same regulatory game because we are beholden to the FDA.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we have to go through that process. And so our modus operandi, even though we're doing with very different things, we have to follow the same rule set.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's helpful. Now, for anybody who's listening and how do they take more responsibility when it comes to looking at different pharmaceutical options and medicine options when their doctor's presenting this to them? What would you say some key questions that would might be good to ask, or where can they look for additional information if they're wanting to know more about the benefits and risks of these drugs?
So yeah, that's a very, very loaded question. Let me premise that first, because in science is very, very broad, and we don't know what we don't know. And to be honest with you, what we don't know that we don't know is more than what we know. And so there's always going to be nuances once a pharmaceutical or biopharma, a therapeutic, hits the general population. There's going to be things that where you're seeing it right now with the GLP-1 receptor agonists. We can only see during the clinical trials what we can study. And you got to remember too, it is a business. If we don't get a drug approved, we've just literally wasted billions, with a B, billions of dollars. And so when we set up the clinical trials, we have to go and put them within a box. And this is the framework that we are operating out of. And here are the questions that we put inside this box. Are we able to check mark we are able to satisfy those questions? And the way the system is set up, if we can do that, and then the three questions that the FDA always asks is the drug itself safe? Once we put it into the human body, is it going to turn around and kill you? No. For the most part, no. There's always side effects with everything. Second question is from a manufacturing perspective, is that safe? Are you able to guarantee from batch to batch different manufacturing sites? It's the exact same thing. That's the second major question that they ask. The third thing is, does it work reasonably statistically within the pretense that you say it's going to work? That's the third and the least important. All of them. So everything that we try to develop is on a Gaussian distribution or a bell-shaped curve in which you're trying to get the maximum effect for the broadest level of population. But there's always asymptotes on that. You got people who are going to be hyper responders. You got people who are non-responders whatsoever. We can't also with that, there's also going to be things that take place that are outside of that box that we're not looking for. Nor honesty should we be looking for, because no drug would ever get approved then. And then the people who need this and would benefit from this would never get any type of solution. And so the reason why I stated that, because if you go to the drug manufacturer website, or if you ask your physician, you're going to get very bulimic responses, because they can only answer what is based off of what is in that box. Now, you can start playing Google Doc and Googling stuff yourself. There are resources out there, like this podcast for one. Decoding Health is another one, in which we do our best to try to dissect some of the stuff out by integrating, what's being seen in the research that hasn't hit the white coats with the stethoscopes yet. But a lot of that stuff is still very potentially subjective, depending upon the number of studies. It's not gospel at that point in time. And I'm also going to throw that out there too. There's a lot of stuff from the supplementation standpoint as well. There's a lot of trends. You see a lot of stuff on social media. You got an RFK, he's doing methylene blue on Air Force One. What is this? It's a fabric dye. How can I get my hands on that stuff? And so, long story short with all of it, in terms of up-to-date information, I would truly hope that your physician would be able to answer those, the prescribing physician be able to answer those. However, though, they're busy individuals. They don't keep up on every single drug. My recommendation would be is if you're being prescribed a drug, go and see if there are patient groups that are out there that share stories, because that is the real battlefield. What are people seeing? What are people saying? And for the most part, it's kind of like stars for a restaurant on Yelp. You're always going to get people complaining about something, okay? If those are the minority of comments on that, these might be these outliers and they would never be happy. It might be the wrong drug for them. Maybe they're non-compliant and they don't want to admit that. There's all of these different factors, but for the most part, it's just like, this is really good. Maybe it's worth having a shot. However, though, one thing that you can definitively have with a discussion you can have with your prescribing physician is, okay, you want me to go on this therapeutic. For how long? What is the end game? What is the goal for this to do? And if it's like forever, ask the question, why? If the answer is, I don't know, then you need a second opinion. Okay. If it's like, oh, that's a great question. I don't know. Let me put some more brain cells onto this and let's come up with a better treatment plan for you. But like in the case, like I'm going to use the GLP-1 receptor agonists again, it has a place. It absolutely has a place in the treatment of certain indications. However, though, if you have a plan to go on, you better have a plan to go off because those are clearly showing these are not a long-term solution. Okay. And so you and your provider, as well as with teams like what you and Dylan do, Erica, is like, okay, we're starting here. Well, what does define success? Let's define what success looks like and then create this plan, including this potential pharmaceutical or supplement per se. And then I'm taking on the responsibility. I'm going to get to work. I'm going to follow what you guys say, dietary, exercise, do this. And the goal might be in 6 months from now, you hit this particular goal. We'll reevaluate in 6 months. Now, if I hit that goal, okay, we hit success. Okay. So now what does that mean in terms of the next steps? And then you do a reevaluation on that. It's, people in the workout space, they do this all the time. They go and they do something, they get to a point and then they plateau. And then they do a reevaluation and they figure that this is like no different. Maybe success means that, or maybe we didn't hit success. Do we stay the course a little bit longer? Do we do some sort of modification? So there's so many very real and beneficial conversations that can and should be had, but you have to work with really, really great people who understand the patient, what their needs are, and clearly defining short, medium, and long-term success. Because if it's just like, I want to pop a pill, not change anything, and I'm just going to be good, you're setting yourself up for failure. Nothing works that way. And you're actually making the problem probably worse for later on down the road than what you're looking at even right now. So, again, back to it. I really wish that there was this standard playbook you can go off, but we're limited by the knowledge that we have. And for either good or bad reasons, the knowledge is limited, but there are realistic questions that you can ask. And I think the most proper one would be, okay, you want me on this med? Please explain to me why. Okay, if we turn around and hit these milestones, what does that look like then? It might be, okay, we can reduce you to a maintenance dose. Okay, that's a response. But is it like, is this what the rest of my life is going to look like? And to be honest with you, in some cases, I'm sorry, it is. That's the hard truth of it is just like you have such a problem and the risk to reward is we need to keep you on this drug forever. That might be the case, but they should be able to justify that, So again, those are the types of questions that I would be bringing to the table. And unless it's something like life-threatening, like, oh my God, you're going to die like right now, you do have time to sit down and do some research, ask questions, find patients groups, ask them for their opinion. Okay. Have you heard through your, 6 degrees of bacon, so to speak, other types of stories that aren't being included, into this group? Like have real conversations and hopefully that will provide the clarity that you need in order for you to be your N of one.
That is so good. No, both points are great. Finding the patient groups on Facebook, I hadn't even thought of that. So that is a fantastic point. And then also that question of asking, like, what's the end game here? How long am I going to be on that? Because a lot of these drugs state on the actual package that it is not for long-term use. One, like stomach acid reducers, like proton pump inhibitors. Literally say on the package, not to be used for longer than 3 months. We see people all the time that have been on it for years and they just keep going, getting it refilled. And this is how people end up in that whole like polypharmacy, like is the number one reason why people like one of the number one killers in America, polypharmacy being on just so many different drugs because you're on one for a long time and now you develop another problem that may not be related to that drug at all. Do you have another one, and all of those combined start causing serious problems. So I love that whole having an end game, and if they don't know the answer or don't want to give you the answer, then finding that second opinion is really powerful. But it also puts you back into the driver's seat of your health as well. You're part of the plan and you get to set your goals as well. And as far as like how this whole thing works with getting drug approved, one of the questions I have is, you stated the three things that you have to check the box for with the FDA. And I still wonder about some drugs. For example, I had this experience with my mom. She's recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's and went to the
Sorry.
went.
No, keep going because I know exactly where you're going, and I want to slap myself in the forehead regarding that because that's one of those areas where there was absolutely clear-cut shenanigans that took place. But please continue on. Sorry for
You're
interrupting.
good. So Cleveland Clinic, and her doctor at the Cleveland Clinic was great. But at the end of the appointment, she gave us this little like pamphlet, and she said, "I'm kind of required to tell you about this drug, but I'm going to let you know it's not worth it." She's like, the amount of risks for like cerebral hemorrhages and stroke versus the benefit that you'll actually see in your disease is pretty, the risk benefit ratio is way off, basically.
Yeah.
And I was really glad she was that honest about it. But I also was just kind of blows my mind. I'm like, well, then how did that drug get on the market in the first place? Like, there's a clear. So how
was
does
it
that work?
Aduhelm?
I'm sorry?
Was that Aduhelm? Was that Aduhelm?
No, I feel like I wish I had the pamphlet on me. I can't.
Lequembi?
Sorry?
Lequembi?
That. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got you. And so here, that was indication specific. Indication meaning disease specific. And when it goes in front of the FDA board, so that would be on the CDER side, D meaning drugs. It's a 13-member board, and they have to get a majority in order to get that drug passed. One of the considerations that they have to use as a part of that is what is currently available for the patient group. And unfortunately, with Alzheimer's disease, there is nothing. Okay. Now, the reason why I asked about Aduhelm is because it was shown that because Aduhelm did not work at all. The numbers, the science wasn't even there, and it still got approval. And then it came to find out that it really looked like some of those panel members were actually paid. There was a high-profile individual on there from Harvard University who actually resigned from Harvard because huge drama in the business of science when it comes to that. Now, in the case of Leqembi, there is statistical significance that, for the record, Aduhelm is no longer an available product.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows, in the case of Leqembi, there is in certain patient groups statistical benefit to this. I am going to ask you a personal question. Is your mom ApoE4 by chance?
She is ApoE3, and she has ApoE3, ApoE4 is her.
Okay, so she's heterozygous for the ApoE4. In all of those drugs, and all of the ones that are coming forward because their mechanism of action, their MOA, there's a black box warning. If you're ApoE4, either homozygous or heterozygous, you cannot take that drug. You will have ARIA, which is cerebral hemorrhage, and every patient who takes that drug will have some level of cerebral bleed. That's just the nature of the mechanism of that drug. Because of the nature of your genotype and then phenotype of being ApoE4, your probability of stroking out is very, very high. And like even in the Biogen Eisai drugs, Aduhelm was the first one, and then it was replaced by something else. In the phase 3, I'm blanking on the drug. There's so many names of these drugs. I get lost. All the time. It's like parents can't remembering their kids' names. Like, how can you remember all of these drug names? In the phase 3 clinical trials, there were actually deaths that were associated with the drugs. But it came back down to it is what can the medical system currently provide to these patients? Nothing. We're going to give them the opportunity to have something, but there has to be informed consent. And in that particular case, it is a black box warning on it. And so that's good that your physician actually brought that up, because most consumers don't read the black box warning. And hopefully you would get caught by a pharmacist saying, like, you do realize that there's a black box warning on this. But yeah, that's, your mom was not appropriate for that drug. And I'm glad that that was caught, because that would have most likely, statistically, that wouldn't have been a happy ending.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for explaining that, because I was just kind of baffled. I'm like, oh, benefit, great risk. Why is this being offered at all to anybody? But I mean, that's a really good
I'm going
point.
to throw another caveat on there because of that type of leniency. I'm going to sit there and say, within that FDA panel, there is a huge trend within my industry in terms of taking drugs and purposing them towards orphan indication. Orphan indication is a rare disease in which there's a significant lack of treatment available for that population group, making them high unmet medical need.
Mm.
And so therefore, if we can tailor our drug for some, and you got to remember, it's safety, and does it even work? Okay. And the leniency offered to that, if we can provide some level of benefit to this high need group, there is a higher probability of us being able to get the product. And then they work on what's known as label add-ons. Probably the two biggest drugs that did this were Humira and Remicade for the inflammatory responses. Those started off as orphan indications, very rare forms of ulcerative colitis. And then they got expanded all the way out to rheumatoid arthritis, because they would have never been able to get a drug approved at that point in time for rheumatoid arthritis. So they started with lowest hanging fruit, and then we expand from there.
Well, that's interesting. I was on Remicade for a little while as well. So that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
So
Yeah.
I knew that was going to be difficult for you.
Yeah. And another thing that's always wild to me too is, the side effects of things. There's side effects to everything. And so that's something I feel like is always a good question to ask your doctor as well, because you need to know is that, and it may not happen to you, I'm not saying that, but like in my experience, one of the first drugs I was on was methotrexate. And they didn't tell me about the fact that I could lose my hair. And at one point, I had to up the dose, and I was not doing the pill form. I was having to do injections to up the dose. It wasn't helping my symptoms, by the way. But anyways, insurance required me to go through this process. And when my hair started falling out in clumps, giant clumps, they just kind of poo-pooed it and was like, oh, it's just because you've been sick for so long. And like, that's just what's happening. And then it's like, we had to look it up and be like, no, this is a major side effect, common side effect. And now I know people who are on methotrexate and they're told to get on folate and biotin supplements and things like that to prevent hair loss, And I'm like, that drug was around for like years before I started taking it. But it's just that transparency would be so nice to have in that setting with the doctors. But I don't know if it's one, they don't have enough time. Two, do they not know? And three, are they also afraid that it's going to make the patient just not want to do anything? I don't want to do that. And then they feel like they can't help the patient if they don't take the medication.
Well, I think it's more so the first two aspects. It's just the Western medical system, with the way the payor systems are, it's extremely hard for clinicians to be able to spend the appropriate amount of time that patients need and, to be honestly, deserve, because of that workload and the whole breadth. Even a specialized physician has a huge breadth of knowledge that they have to maintain. They're not going to know every single adverse event that has been reported regarding use of a drug. Let me ask you a question, Erica. Where did you find that information from that people were losing their hair?
To be honest, it was my mom. So I think she just Googled it.
She Googled it, but this is where something like the actual pharmaceutical webpage would be very, very helpful, because if they saw it in the clinical trials, and there's going to be things in there that are reported that aren't even related to the drug. It's like headaches and stuff like that. A lot of times it's just people were having headaches. It wasn't because of the drug, but it was reported during the clinical trials. I had headaches. They have to include that in there. So that's from an informed consent standpoint. That's a very reliable source of, at this point in time, what do they know? And then does that get backed up by the patient advocacy groups on Facebook? It's just like maybe nobody has seen headache. If you would have looked that up, if it was even available at that point in time, I guarantee there would be people like, I'm losing my hair in handfuls. Has anybody ever seen this before? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Lots of people.
Yes.
Now, with all the changes that are happening with Big Pharma, with, the MAHA movement and everything like that, where do you see the pharmaceutical industry heading? Do you think it's going in the right direction? Do you think that, the research, because there's a lot of fear about research being hindered with these new standards and everything that RFK Jr. is putting out. And so there's that side of things. And then there's, more transparency is better for the consumer. So what are your thoughts on what you see changing in the landscape there?
So I might be giving you a response that is going to upset people.
Fine.
But I think the drug industry is just going to continue on being the drug industry. We have no choice but to keep on pushing forward unless nobody wants more innovation. If you guys, if the world turned around and said that we're not going to accept any more drugs, FDA is gone, what you have is what you have, then you would see the entire industry collapse and go away, and I'd go off doing other things in my life, However, there is this need for innovation. And the way it stands right now, especially with the current administration, they realize this stuff is extremely expensive. So one of the things that's going on is like, how do we streamline these costs? Because the cost is one of those things that is hindering the development of these things coming forward. I do need clarification from you, though, Erica, regarding hindrance of research. What aspect are you coming at from that?
That's just an argument I keep hearing popping up, is that RFK is shutting down research in certain areas, like for, the mRNA vaccines and things like that. And that again, I don't think they're well-founded fears myself. But I don't know. But that's just an argument I keep hearing all the time, that like research is just getting totally blocked, but I don't know in what areas.
So long story short, when it comes to the mRNA therapeutics, I'm going to classify them there because these were originally developed for drugs as drugs. And due to a particular opportunity, they were translated over into this area in which we can get the product ASAP and start making money. I'm going to go and frame it that way. There is true concern regarding the long-term safety of those molecular compounds. All of the stuff that we're getting from the fallout, from COVID, from the pandemic, countries that are banning, like Japan, those are totally banned. There are and Japan's not the only one. Should the federal government still be feeding research into something in which there isn't even enough base to show that there is long-term safety on them? Or is that responsibility on you to go and prove that there is long-term safety, and then we'll open up the spigots again? Is this even worthwhile of tax dollars? Now, another aspect that, I was just wanting a little bit more color on your side. One of the big things that the current HHS Secretary RFK is being chastised for is the reduction in funding of the NIH. Well, you got to look at where that funding was actually going to. And the biggest thing in my academic peers are going to scream at me regarding it. Fine, scream away. I really don't care. Academic institutions were charging 65% overhead. Okay, so that is a huge amount of overhead charging towards the federal government to go and buy things like pens. Yes, there are administrative people, but you can actually go and put a lot of those administrative people under direct costs. Long story short, there was money that was going away that are part of these grants that weren't even going to research. So people have to understand, well, okay, here's this $5 million research grant. Well, how much of that is actually going to research or is it going to overhead? And don't get me wrong, overhead's important, but like when it comes to the academic institutions, where is the student's tuition going? Where is all of that other stuff, all of those other monies going to? Like, you should be able to support your buildings. The need for federal grants. And so that's part of the argument where things got hit. The second thing, and I'm going to be biased on this, but I've heard this story time and time again. I'd already mentioned on this. Research in academia versus research in industry are grossly different. And I've had people at conferences come up and say, we are not seeing any productivity out of these academic type grants. We put money in, but yeah, information's coming out, but we can't use it. Like, how is this going to help grandma? It's not. Whereas in industry, if we don't come up with a product, it's bye-bye. Yeah, we're out of jobs. And so there's two fundamental differences in terms of what does success look like. In most times in academia, success means I got tenure. I'm able to support some grad students. That's great. Awesome. I support that. However, success in industry is that we've created something of value for the rest of the world. Even though there was a net decrease at the NIH, because it was the big, beautiful bill or whatever the heck it was called, the amount of funding to small business increased, in which small business, SBIR, small business innovative research grants, actually increased. And so in terms of coming up with products that will help your audience members, there's never been a better time. So people who are upset they only have a small sliver of the spectrum of gray regarding what's really taking place in the world. So I know this is going to be unpopular with some people. Fine, it's unpopular, but this is what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And there's both good and bad that's coming out of this. And so like I've actually had some of my academic peers who serve as advisors on my small business grants. They're like, hey, is there any way you can help me out? Okay. This is what we're going to do. For the January 5th deadline, we're doing a new grant. I will put one of your because I like you. I want to help you. I want to help your lab. We're going to go and write in one of your grad students to be funded by my company to support IMBP research. We just need to come up with a plan on how do they use this proprietary research to be a part of their PhD thesis. End of story. And it can be done. Why? Because I did it, so I just want to kind of throw that out there that there are ways around this. A part of the intent is how do we partner academia with industry for the benefit of the United States of America. So I'll throw that out there. Just back to the whole market view on MAHA. It's politics. It's politics. And again, back to everything that I said, define success. At the federal level, what can be done realistically within 2 years, because that's when the next elections take place before people start getting upset. From us as taxpayers, who wants, again, it's with all great intention, love the spirit of everything. What is going to be able to get done with the current administration and the rest of government in place within a 2-year period that's going to have any type of significance on my life?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, seriously. It's like, well, what are we going to do? Fine. Kellogg's has willingly gone and removed fake dye from Cheerios.
Willingly.
It's a win.
It is. Yes, 100%. We'll take it.
But the simple fact that Cheerios is still recommended as a good breakfast for you, not Cheerios, Fruit Loops.
Yes.
I'm going to throw Cheerios in there. Oh, it's a great way to start off your morning for your kids. BS. That's the type of change that we need. But to be honest with you, it's taken us 50 years to get where we're at right now. It's going to take us decades to get out of it. So I'm just trying to be realistic and pragmatic. However, here's the saving grace of all of this. We're still allowed freedom of choice.
Yes.
Educate yourself, go into the grocery store, buy the products that fit within your ethos. Help you and your family reach that defined goal. And honestly, if you're out there raising kids, if you don't have defined goals from a nutritional and health standpoint worked out within your family, then you guys need to sit down at the dinner table and work this out. Because the moment you start falling behind on this is the way I go and I explain this to people. It's like, you're right here. You want to be up here, but you can equally wind up down here. Now, if you're on this path to get up here, it's a nice, easy slope, like walking up a nice little hill. If you get down here and then you have that shit moment, I'm in trouble. To go from here to up here is like climbing Everest. It can be done, but you have to commit. You have to work that much harder. So it's just have a plan, define these things. And it might be simple as like, hey, with the kids, with the boys, by the time you graduate from high school, you need to be able to do 50 push-ups nonstop. That's a reasonable.
Yeah, right.
That's a reasonable request. And that gives you 50. What the average 35-year-old male now can't even do 5 push-ups?
Yeah.
So again, I sit down, have these discussions. You guys turn around. Unless your last name is Kiernan and you're under the age of 18, I have no say of what goes on in your life. Personal suggestion, though, and this comes from like the bottom of my heart and like all the love and wanting people to be the best versions of themselves. Sit down and have these discussions with you, your partner, your spouse, your children, and let's define what this roadmap of health looks like, because until this thing gets rectified, nobody else is going to help you. Even the people with the white coats and the stethoscopes, they're not dietitians. And heaven forbid, if you talk to a dietitian in the freaking system, you're not going to be getting good advice. I'm so sorry. And I don't blame them. They're educated. They know what they know. They're educated on what they know. And unfortunately, what you don't know is what you don't know. And that's the majority of everything. So again, I'm not advocating for people to being Google Doc, being a Google doctor, because that can take you down rabbit holes and create a whole bunch of paranoia. That's not necessarily healthy. But those patient groups, even diet groups, I heard about this keto thing or this carnivore thing. And again, those things are extremely tribal as well.
Yeah.
Veganism, extremely tribal. Is there a happy medium? So find these groups in which listen to the pure carnivores, but then find people who have found a middle ground, who have just got these absolutely outstanding, healthy lives, and learn from them. There's messages to get from the keto group, from the vegan group. Absolutely. You can learn from that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to work for you. So if carnivore keto works for you, awesome. God bless you. Go off and do it. If vegan works for you, awesome. Knock yourself up. Okay. Most people, you can't go to those extremes. Find something in the middle. Find people who have already done that journey before and learn from them. So
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. And exactly what you said, the whole MAHA thing, this is politics. This is, we can't expect it to, as a society, we're at that Mount Everest moment, right? Like a society health-wise, we've been doing this and now we've got to go straight up. And it's a Herculean task. And personally, I feel like a lot of people were disappointed on the MAHA side of things who were cheering for MAHA because, they expected RFK Jr. just come in like a wrecking ball and just wreck everything and start all over. And it's like, but it's politics. And that's kind of why he's the best person for it, because he understands politics and he understands bureaucracy. And, he knows the ins and outs of how he's going to have to go about certain things to see any change. And it's going to be tiny little wins that we'll just have to be thankful for the wins. And like you said, in the end, it's your choice to make what you do.
Well, and I want to add a little bit of color to that. The worst thing you can do in a political type situation is create a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just, I'm going to say this regarding Iraq. We did this in Iraq. We created a political vacuum, and good freaking God, what did that cost us as a nation? How many people died? How many trillions of dollars that we spent unnecessarily? Yeah, we didn't like the people that were in there, but that was not the right way to turn around. We threw kerosene on that fire.
Yep.
And to come in like a wrecking ball and turn around and just let's flatten everything and rebuild. To be honest with you, part of me says, yeah, Let's go ahead and do that. But when you sit there and think about it, if the wrong people wind up going in as a part of that rebuilding, this will be worse than what we had before. So you got to take your wins. Okay. And could there be better communication from the higher ups defining and justifying this is what we are doing? Maybe, but a lot of that stuff's on a need to know basis, and we don't need to know. We don't have the security clearance to be privy to that type of information. So, nonetheless, I just want to kind of throw that out there because the audience members, we all have a responsibility in this. And before us going and looking for the pitchforks and saying this isn't working, well, what were your expectations in terms of defining success to begin with? And was that unrealistic? Like if I've got somebody who's 400 pounds and they're like, oh, I want to go and compete in a bikini modeling show in 3 months. Okay, pull back. We need to get back to reality regarding this type of stuff because that's what America is right now, is a 400-pound person who just can't even get up off the couch. So what can we do to be able to get you to stand up so you can walk to the refrigerator and even get your own crappy food? Like, how do we even get you that far? Most people would be like, oh, that's a terrible endpoint. Well, it's a huge success from where we started at.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
just want to throw that out there.
No, fantastic point. I really appreciate it. And Dr. Urban, I've really appreciated this entire discussion. I think this has been really good. Again, kind of figuring out the nuance, figuring out the gray areas, and understanding your side of the industry too, and how people can navigate this so that we can get the benefits of the innovation behind, like what you do as well for people who are sick and need it. So I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to discuss all this. How can people get in touch with you, watch your podcast, all the jazz? How can they connect with you?
So we're Decoding Health Podcast. We're on all major streaming sources. The biggest one, though, is on YouTube. So go there. When you go to YouTube, actually just look up my name, Urban Kiernan. Other people have tried to use Decoding Health in the past. Yeah, you pull up. That person doesn't look like the guy that was on Erica's show. Yeah, it's because that was like a historic, that the algorithm turned around and picked up when you did your search. Decoding Health or Urban Kiernan on YouTube is a good way to find me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Urban Kiernan out there. You can find me on Instagram, Lightbear. That's my name on that one. I am on TikTok and X. I really don't. I have a 9 to 5. I'm not a social media person.
Yeah.
Stuff does go up there sometime. Well, the Instagram and LinkedIn, there's stuff that gets put up there regularly. For the record, the majority of that is because of my producers of the show putting stuff up in there. But I do see those ones. I will interact. I will comment back. Again, would love feedback from people regarding information. If there are particular topics, Erica, that, somebody wants to see, and it's just like, Erica, you and Dylan are great. Love what you guys are doing, but we would like to see a researcher's perspective on this. Guys, just draw me a line, and throw it up there. I'm always looking for, new topics to turn around and bring up. I'll put my brain onto it. And if I can give a educated and reasonable answer on something, I'll turn around and provide it to you guys. But, Erica, I just want to sit there and say, you and Dylan are doing a fantastic job. We need more individuals such as you guys out there, because the way the medical system is set up, they are overburdened. They can't keep up with this. And long story short, the people who suffer are the ones who need help the most. And you guys are able, through your guys' service, to be able to just come in and bridge that gap, spend the additional time, and help them work out and identify what does success look like in this appropriate period of time. And it's not like this is like a one and done thing. People can continue working on with you. Okay, we met this goal. Let's define what the next one is. And heck, if I can do it, hey, ladies and gentlemen, you guys can do it too. I'm nothing special. I'm just a guy that just goes out there but I was passionate. I wanted a solution. I wanted my life back. I turned it around, and here I sat talking with great people like Erica. Hopefully everybody is being touched by this right now, just to take your life up to the next level. It's just like defining wins with Maha politically. You have to do that within yourself. It's baby steps. You just don't get up and run a freaking marathon. Oh, I have some friends who run marathons, and I'm just like, "Hey, next time you need a lift, like, let me know. I will drive you 26.1 miles," because to me, that's absolutely crazy. But, nonetheless, it's like there are resources out there for you to go and like Eric and Dylan. So again, hats off to you guys in fighting the good fight.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And again, thank you so much for your time today and all your insights. And yes, check out his podcast, the Decoding Health podcast. He has tons of insights, fantastic guests, and I think you'll learn a lot. So thanks again, Urban.
Do my best. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.